Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Friday, March 7th, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The weather in Riverside will be mild today with a high of 61.6 degrees and a low of 42.4, so you might want to grab a light jacket if you're heading out. Coming up on today's show, we'll examine why allies remain concerned about Trump's NATO comments, even as defense spending reaches record levels. Then, we'll look at the potential impact of the USPS overhaul on rural communities across America. Plus, we'll analyze what the recent jobs report and cryptocurrency summit reveal about the economic priorities of the Trump administration. All this and more on Alex's News. In our top story today, former President Donald Trump is once again making waves with controversial comments about NATO, despite the alliance's historical support of the United States. Joining us to discuss this is our political correspondent, Ethan. Ethan, what exactly did the former president say about our NATO allies?
Grace, Trump has raised serious questions about NATO's mutual defense commitments, suggesting the United States might not defend NATO members who don't meet defense spending targets. According to multiple reports, he explicitly stated, "I would not protect you," referring to countries not meeting the alliance's spending goals of 2% of their GDP. What makes these comments particularly notable is that they come despite NATO's unprecedented support for the U.S. after September 11, 2001, when the alliance invoked Article 5, its collective defense clause, for the first and only time in its history.
That's quite a statement. How have our international allies responded to these remarks?
There's been significant pushback, Grace. French President Emmanuel Macron was quick to respond, affirming France's loyalty to the alliance. As reported by international news sources, Macron emphasized the historical alliance between France and the United States, stating, "We have always been there for each other," and stressing that allies should remain loyal regardless of circumstances. There's also growing concern about Trump's relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin, who has long viewed NATO as a threat to Russian interests.
This comes at a time when NATO spending has been a hot topic. What's the current state of defense spending among NATO members?
That's an interesting point, Grace. According to the latest NATO data, we're actually seeing record compliance with spending targets. As of 2024, 23 out of 32 NATO member states, that's nearly 72%, are meeting the 2% GDP defense spending target. That's a dramatic increase from 2021, when only 6 countries, or about 19%, were meeting this target at the end of Trump's previous administration.
Trump has often claimed credit for pushing allies to increase their defense spending. Is there merit to that claim?
There's a mixed picture there. While NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has credited Trump's pressure for increasing compliance, analysis from defense policy experts suggests that Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine was actually the primary catalyst for the boost in defense spending. Following the invasion, NATO Europe and Canada increased defense spending by a substantial 18%, which led to the record number of countries meeting the 2% target. Historical data shows spending had already begun to increase following the 2014 Wales summit commitment, well before Trump took office.
Are there contradictions between Trump's statements and the positions of his administration officials?
Absolutely, Grace. Despite Trump's remarks questioning NATO commitments, his nominee for NATO ambassador, Matt Whitaker, has affirmed the U.S. commitment to Article 5 as ironclad during Senate confirmation hearings. Additionally, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth previously made statements that seem to contradict the alliance's principles, saying the U.S. wouldn't participate in a peacekeeping force in Ukraine or defend countries participating in such a force if Russia attacked them.
What impact might all this have on NATO's actual military capabilities?
That's the crucial question. While NATO's European allies collectively reached the 2% GDP defense spending target for the first time, with collective spending of $380 billion in 2024, Stoltenberg has emphasized that increased funding must quickly result in concrete equipment and contracts. Some NATO leaders, including Mark Rutte, have even suggested that the 2% target may not be sufficient, advocating for targets above 3% to address emerging threats in today's complex security environment.
Thank you, Ethan, for that comprehensive breakdown of this developing story. We'll continue to follow how these statements might affect U.S.-NATO relations in the coming months. Our second story today focuses on major changes coming to the United States Postal Service that could significantly impact how Americans, especially those in rural communities, receive their mail. Joining us to discuss these developments is our reporter Chloe. Good morning, Chloe. What can you tell us about these Postal Service transformations?
Good morning, Grace. The United States Postal Service is currently implementing one of the most substantial overhauls in recent years through its Delivering for America plan. According to Perplexity, as of January 19 this year, the USPS has already begun implementing price adjustments across various services, with Priority Mail and Priority Mail Express seeing a 3.2% increase, USPS Ground Advantage rising by 3.9%, and Parcel Select jumping by a significant 9.2%. Interestingly, the price of a first-class stamp will remain at 73 cents through the first half of 2025.
This plan sounds quite extensive. When did it begin, and what are its main objectives?
The Delivering for America plan was launched in March 2021 as a 10-year strategy. Perplexity reports that it focuses on three key areas: improving financial stability, enhancing service reliability, and increasing operational efficiency. The plan includes $40 billion in investments for technology and infrastructure upgrades, and has already introduced new parcel services like USPS Connect and USPS Ground Advantage.
I understand there's something called the Regional Transportation Optimization Initiative that's particularly controversial. What exactly is that?
That's right, Grace. The Regional Transportation Optimization Initiative, or RTO, is perhaps the most contentious aspect of these changes. According to Perplexity, this initiative eliminates evening mail collection at post offices located more than 50 miles from a regional processing distribution center. For rural communities, this means mail will remain overnight at local post offices rather than being transported immediately, effectively adding an extra day to delivery times.
How will this affect people living in rural areas specifically?
The impact on rural communities appears to be disproportionate. Perplexity notes that rural areas in Kansas, for example, could see first-class mail delivery times extend to 6 or more days in some cases, compared to the previous standard of 3 days. The Postal Regulatory Commission has expressed concern, finding that the plan lacks convincing evidence of success and could negatively impact rural service areas. NPR News, as highlighted by KMUW, has also been covering these potential changes, underscoring their national significance.
What's driving these changes? Is this primarily a financial decision?
Absolutely, Grace. Financial challenges are the main driver. Despite the Postal Service Reform Act of 2022 repealing pre-funding requirements for retiree health benefits, Perplexity reports that the Postal Service still expects these funds to be depleted by fiscal year 2031. Rising retirement costs could divert funds from capital investments, potentially impacting the USPS's ability to modernize services and maintain financial viability.
Are there any plans to address the concerns about reduced service in rural areas?
Yes, the USPS is planning several mitigation efforts. According to Perplexity, they plan to partner with local delivery services and leverage technology to improve operational efficiency. This includes implementing advanced logistics and tracking systems to streamline delivery processes and reduce delays. The Postal Regulatory Commission has made over 36 recommendations for updating the plan, with a particular emphasis on addressing rural service concerns.
Have Kansas senators responded to these changes, given the potential impact on their constituents?
While specific responses from Senators Jerry Moran and Roger Marshall to the 2025 RTO initiative weren't available in the reporting, Perplexity notes that both senators have previously been active in addressing mail delivery issues in Kansas, including calling for an audit of postal facilities in Kansas and Missouri due to delivery delays.
Thank you, Chloe, for that comprehensive look at the changes coming to the U.S. Postal Service. It's clear that as these transformations continue to roll out, rural communities across America will need to adapt to new postal realities, while officials work to balance financial sustainability with service quality.
You're welcome, Grace. It's definitely a developing situation that many Americans will be watching closely in the coming months.
Here are some other headlines. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi has strongly criticized the United States over tariffs during his annual press conference, calling them arbitrary and harmful to international trade relations. Wang vowed that China would continue to retaliate against these measures. He also reasserted China's claims over the South China Sea, blaming external forces for manipulating regional tensions, particularly with the Philippines. Wang highlighted China's efforts to combat cyber fraud in collaboration with neighboring countries, and criticized Japan for not reflecting on past aggressions. In Washington, the CIA has laid off some recently hired officers as part of a broader restructuring under Director John Ratcliffe, who was confirmed on January 23. Ratcliffe has promised to overhaul the agency with a renewed focus on human-gathered intelligence. These layoffs are part of a larger series of workforce reductions across federal agencies under the Trump administration, including USAID, the Department of the Interior, Veterans Affairs, and Energy. Violence has erupted in Syria's coastal region, with clashes between government forces and Assad loyalists killing more than 70 people. Following the fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime in December 2024, Alawite insurgent groups have formed in western Syria, particularly in areas like Latakia and Tartus. On March 6, a wave of unrest struck the western Syrian coast, with insurgents killing 15 security personnel in Latakia. The Syrian transitional government has imposed curfews and sent reinforcements to quell the violence. President Trump's administration is moving forward with plans to dismantle the Department of Education, with newly confirmed Secretary Linda McMahon potentially firing herself if successful. The department currently manages billions in federal funding for schools and colleges, oversees the $1.5 trillion federal student loan portfolio, and enforces civil rights laws for students. Congressional approval would be required to formally disband the agency, needing 60 Senate votes. Trump aims to return control of education to states and has criticized federal involvement in education policy. Tribal nations have expressed serious concerns that Trump administration budget cuts violate federal trust responsibilities established by treaties. Haskell Indian Nations University and the Southwestern Indian Polytechnic Institute have faced significant layoffs, threatening their accreditation. The Bureau of Indian Affairs has lost 188 employees, while the Interior Department has laid off 2,600 workers, undermining self-determination contracts and delaying federal funding to tribes. A coalition of tribal leaders has sent a letter urging the administration to preserve tribal funding and respect their sovereign status. In our third story this morning, we're tracking two major economic developments converging today: the monthly jobs report and a historic White House summit on cryptocurrency. The Labor Department will release February's employment data shortly, while President Trump hosts the nation's first ever crypto summit. Joining us with more details is our economic correspondent, Ethan Mitchell. Ethan, let's start with this jobs report. What are we expecting to see?
Grace. According to NPR, the Labor Department will release its February Employment Situation Report at 8:30 a.m. ET today. This monthly report is crucial as it provides comprehensive data on job growth, unemployment rates, and changes across various economic sectors. What makes today's report particularly significant is that it comes amid declining consumer confidence, with President Trump repeatedly pointing to what he calls economic mismanagement by the previous administration, as noted in NPR's Morning Edition.
And simultaneously, we're seeing this unprecedented White House crypto summit happening today. What can you tell us about that event?
That's right, Grace. According to Perplexity, the White House is hosting its first ever crypto summit today, featuring a closed-door roundtable with prominent cryptocurrency executives and administration officials. President Trump is scheduled to meet directly with cryptocurrency founders and investors as part of his stated goal to position the United States as what he's calling the crypto capital of the world, as reported by NPR.
This follows the president's recent announcement about creating a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Can you explain what that entails?
Absolutely. According to reporting from Yahoo Finance, President Trump recently announced plans to establish this strategic Bitcoin reserve that would include not just Bitcoin but other cryptocurrencies like Ethereum, XRP, Solana, and Cardano. What's interesting about this initiative is that it wouldn't use taxpayer dollars. Instead, as Perplexity reports, it would utilize cryptocurrencies already seized by the U.S. government through criminal or civil proceedings.
How substantial are these government holdings currently?
They're quite significant, Grace. According to Perplexity, the Department of Justice seized $3.6 billion worth of Bitcoin in February 2022 related to the 2016 Bitfinex hack, and Arkham Intelligence estimates that the U.S. government currently holds approximately $17 billion in Bitcoin, though that figure still needs official confirmation.
We've also been tracking MicroStrategy, now called Strategy, which has been heavily invested in Bitcoin. How are they performing?
It's been a mixed picture for Strategy. According to Yahoo Finance, the company closed at $304.11 yesterday, down 1.44%. Perplexity reports that Strategy posted a $671 million net loss for the fourth quarter of 2024, primarily due to impairment losses on digital assets totaling over $1 billion. However, the company now holds 471,107 bitcoins, valued at over $45 billion, making it the largest corporate Bitcoin holder. Their stock has surged more than 406% year over year, according to Yahoo Finance, despite their core business revenue decreasing by 3%.
What impact has the strategic crypto reserve announcement had on the market so far?
Initially, there was significant excitement. Perplexity reports that Bitcoin surged to $90,000 following the announcement, before settling back to around $87,000. However, the long-term impact remains uncertain since we lack detailed information about how the reserve will be structured and implemented. Today's summit may provide more clarity on those details.
What specific topics are expected to be discussed at today's summit?
According to Perplexity, we're likely to see discussions around regulatory clarity, potential tax incentives for cryptocurrency transactions, and the broader role digital assets might play in the U.S. economy going forward. This comes as institutional interest in cryptocurrency continues to grow, with Yahoo Finance reporting that even the California State Teachers Retirement System has increased its holdings in Strategy stock.
Thank you, Ethan, for bringing us up to speed on these converging economic stories. We'll be following both the jobs report and the outcomes of this historic crypto summit throughout the day.
You're welcome, Grace. It's certainly a pivotal day for both traditional economic indicators and the emerging digital asset landscape.
That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King, with Claude Sonnet 3.7, Gemini Flash 2.0, the Perplexity API, and the Google Cloud Text-to-Speech API. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.